God here. And it's football season. And it's like 100 degrees outside. Sorry about that. Welcome to Season 4 of Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoyseth and Dave Daba.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. We have made it all the way to Wild Card Weekend. That is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. As always, I am Dave Daba up in Northern California. We are the show, Brad, that believes if you're 72 years old as a head coach in either college football or in the NFL, you probably should retire.
Yeah, it's tough. It was, in one day. I mean, you think of the legendary coaches that in one day, Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, Belichick, all like within a 24-hour period. That was something. I mean, for years we've been saying, when is Belichick going to leave, or when is he going to get fired, whatever. And same thing with Saban, but I didn't see the Pete Carroll one. I kind of saw Pete Carroll coming, but at the same time, I know he's got a lot of ties to the organization, so it seems a little more tricky, that one. But, the way they kind of faded at the end of the year, Seattle, you can kind of see something happening there. Yeah.
And the Saban one didn't really surprise me too much. I'm with you on Pete Carroll. I think, the change was coming. I thought they'd give him one more year. And when you look at his record, especially during the Legion of Boom era, in that 9-year stretch, they had 10 wins or more 8 times. I mean, just extremely impressive. Pete Carroll, probably a little bit underrated as one of the better head coaches in the history of the National Football League. As for Bill Belichick, like when the news came down yesterday morning, I guess I didn't realize he's been there for 24 years. I mean, look, I work up in the Silicon Valley, and you're lucky to be in a gig for 2 years. That's 24 months for those of you that want to add it up. I mean, it is just so impressive that he was able to keep a marriage going with Robert Kraft for that long. We know that, of course, there was the Tom Brady years, which lasted a really long time, but still 24 years with one organization, just super impressive across the board.
Yeah, and now I want to switch gears on you here. And, I don't like to talk about the round ball that much, Dave, right? Because I'm not a big basketball fan, but I'm flipping through the channels last night, and I don't know if you saw this score or not. I all of a sudden I tune in. It's about, maybe 10 minutes left in the UCLA game, and they're playing Utah, I believe it was. And UCLA is getting beat by 50. I mean, I'm like, are you kidding me? They at one point, Dave, they were being outscored in the second half, 54-14. And I'm like, if you're the coach at UCLA, that should be written into your contract. Lose by 50, you're out. That's it. I don't care. Yeah. I don't care how many Pac-12 titles or awards or accolades you've gotten. If you're at UCLA and you lose a basketball game by 50 or so, you're gone. That's it.
I want to see the clause, because I've been waiting for this. I want to see the clause in the contract that says down by 50 at halftime, you get fired. Yeah. Well, last night in the National Basketball Association, TNT was covering a game between the Boston Celtics in Milwaukee against the Bucs. And at one point during the game, the Celtics were down by 45 points. So TNT actually broke in, and this never happens at TNT. They broke in and they said, we're going to switch games. And they actually, because, they have a fixed schedule at TNT. And they said, we're going to switch you to the game where the Oklahoma City Thunder were up by 36 at halftime. Just the legendary Ernie Johnson with that particular line last night. So it it was a night of blowouts in the world of basketball.
Yeah, I've had enough basketball talk now. Can we move on to football?
All right.
You know me and my basketball. I don't like basketball, so I'm going to move into our picks. My first pick is the Eagles at the Buccaneers. And the Eagles are favored by 3 on the road at Tampa. And I got to tell you, Dave, I first of all, I think it's going to be an early exit for both of the Super Bowl teams last year. But I have to tell you, the Eagles, Dave, I don't think they're just not one of the worst teams in the playoffs. Here's a bold statement. I think they're one of the worst teams in football right now. I really do. And that team cannot stop anybody. Offensively, they're not scaring anybody anymore. They're going to a Buccaneers team that has been basically playing playoff games for 3-4 weeks now. Now, they haven't looked very good, and Baker's Baker, and, Todd Bowles is Todd Bowles, and, we can go on with that forever. I'm going to take the Bucs. I just can't believe the Eagles are favored over anybody. If the Eagles were playing Carolina right now, Dave, I think it's a coin flip. I really do.
I'm not taking anything that has David Tepper's name on it. I can tell you that. One of the big Bill Belichick rumors is that Nick Sirianni will be canned on Sunday if he loses. I forget what day this game is, but he'll be canned after the game. This is the Monday night game, which is like the least interesting of all the wild card games on Monday night. And I hate that they do this Monday night wild card. I'm a traditionalist. I want to see, 3 games on Saturday and 3 games on Sunday. So if Sarah,
hold on, Dave, I'm a super traditionalist. I'd like to see 2 games on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and we get rid of half these teams that are in the playoffs, because we got 3 or 4 teams in the playoffs that aren't worthy of being there right now.
Oh yeah, I'm not quite as old school as you are, Mr. Hoysef, on this particular topic. And in fact, I think the problem is that they only have 7 teams, and they should just suck it up and move to 8, which I know you would absolutely hate.
No, I would agree with you. I think 7 is the worst. I do. I would rather have 8 teams than 7. I don't believe in one team in each conference suddenly getting this humongous advantage of having a week off. To me, they already have an advantage because they get to play at home throughout the playoffs, right? I mean, isn't that a big enough advantage? I mean, that's a huge advantage. And so now they get to play at home throughout the playoffs, and they get the luxury of having a week off after 7. I think it's ridiculous. I think the idea of 7 teams was one of the worst ideas I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it makes no sense. And what shocks me is it never comes up for debate in the off-season rule changes and rule meetings that the NFL has. I think we should start a hashtag 8 playoff games and see if we can't at least force the rules committee to talk about it. With regards to this game, this is pretty simple for me. If you had a healthy Baker Mayfield, I would agree with you. However, you have a banged up Baker Mayfield. And what does banged up Baker Mayfield get you? And the answer over the last couple weeks has been clear as water is wet. Compliments to Bruce Willis for that line. And that is, you end up with field goals. Look, as bad as this Philadelphia Eagles team has been over the last 6 weeks, I believe that the Eagles will find a way to win this game by more than the spread that we have. And what is this, 3.5?
I'm going to say it's 3. Yeah.
I just think that they're going to be able to figure this out. And Baker Mayfield, once again, if he were not as banged up as he is, because remember, Baker is playing really hurt, and in fact, probably shouldn't be playing. And when that Baker plays, that's a whole different level of mediocrity. So I like the Eagles a lot in this one.
Yeah, see, I don't see a huge difference between injured Baker Mayfield and non-injured Baker Mayfield. I think at the end of the day, he's Baker Mayfield. And look, I think they have a really good running back in Rachaad White. I think he's one of the best backs in the league. Mike Evans has still got some game. That defense can still play a little bit. This Philadelphia Eagle defense, Dave, it's one of the worst. It has to be one of the bottom 5 defenses in the league. They cannot stop anybody. I mean, they are absolutely terrible. I think the Buccaneers find a way to score over 20, and I think that's enough to win the game. I think this Eagles team is terrible.
All right, Brad, I'll make a bet with you. If the Bucs actually win this game outright, I will at some point in the next 6 months mail you a Rachaad. What's that running back's name? Rachaad White. That you've been so obsessed with. I will mail you a Rachaad White poster. And if for some reason I can't find any Rachaad White posters anywhere, I will make a Rachaad White poster for you and ship it off to you.
The pride of Mount San Antonio College, Rachaad White.
Mount Sac. Love Mount Sac. All right. Moving on to a game that I think we can both agree on, which is the Rams going into Detroit to play the Detroit Lions. This is the quarterback swap game. Jared Goff, the pride of Marin Catholic up here in Marin County, will have to find a way to deal with the Rams secondary while keeping a close eye on Aaron Donald and the rest of the Rams pass rush. With regards to the Rams side of the ball, I expect Stafford to take advantage of the weak secondary that the Detroit Lions currently have. It hasn't been weak all year, but because of injuries, this was like by far the easiest game for me to pick. I like the Rams a lot in this one.
Yeah, I'm not going to go and say it's easy. I think it's actually really one of the more entertaining games of the weekend. I mean, the Rams.
It could be, but I mean, if Goff is Goff, then it won't be.
Well, Goff is Goff. Kind of like Baker is Baker. I mean, I just think the Rams are playing better football, and the Lions, their coach is a big time risk taker, and recently, when you play better football teams, those risks they hurt you because the better football teams can figure out how to stop your risky maneuvers, right? And so the going for it on 4th down in your own territory or going for 2 or from the 7 or whatever it was a couple weeks ago, these kinds of things, you can't do that against good football teams. You're not going to win games like that. And hey, look, he's a risk taker. I think that's a good quality to have in Dan Campbell. I think the turnaround has been amazing. I think Stafford and Goff are, 1A and 1B in terms of, their abilities. I don't think there's a radical difference between the two. I just like the way the Rams are playing on both sides of the ball. And like you said, that Detroit defense right now, not playing great. And so I'm with you. I'm going to take the Rams. And whatever the point spread is there, I guess it was the Rams are they're getting 3. Yeah. So I felt that was a pretty good line. I think that's about what kind of game it's going to be too. I think it'll be a field goal game.
Yeah. I like Stafford a lot in this, sort of a homecoming game. I mean, if Dan Campbell screws up at all during this game, it's just going to be all over the place. Look, this should be this is one of the games I'm most excited about this weekend to sort of see how it all unfolds. The Rams might be a year away from really having all the right pieces together. And then if you say that, then you're also saying, Stafford's a year older, and is he really going to be able to repeat the kind of performances that he's put together over the last 7 or 8 weeks? So I just like the Rams a lot in this. I wouldn't be surprised to see like 34-28 in this game. I mean, And my big concern with the Rams is, if they get a lead, are they going to be able to hold it? Because they certainly have sputtered towards the end of regulation in numerous games over the last 5 weeks.
All right, my next game is the Steelers at the Bills. It's a big line. It's 10, which is large. And the weather could play a factor in this deal. I would probably, if I was going to bet it for real, I would wait until we got closer to, kickoff time to find out, if it's going to be like a, blizzard, or if it's going to be nice, or if it's going to be super cold. I just don't know. But this time of year, you never know what you're going to get in Buffalo. But they are a 10-point favorite. Dave, I've said it many times. Mike Tomlin's a wizard. He's a great coach. He's a leader of men. But Buffalo's playing better football since they made some changes within their organization. They made and they're on a run. I mean, you could make a case they're the hottest team right now in the AFC. So it's 10-point. The really concern for me here is, the over-under on this thing is like 35.5. And so to get a 10-point line on 35.5, I mean, they're basically, Vegas is basically saying the Steelers are going to score like 13 or something, which, is entirely possible. But if they get up around 17 or 20, then I think this line's probably a little rich. But I think the Bills defense is playing great. The team should be hot. Their fan base is great. And like I've been saying all year, I just don't think the Steelers are a very good football team. No TJ Watt this week probably. So, I'm going to take the Bills. I'm going to give the 10.
I hate that it's 10, as you might imagine. I'm with you on everything you just said. My big concern on the Buffalo side of the fence is the roller coaster ride that is Josh Allen. This is a game where Josh Allen doesn't need to take risks. And so this is not the kind of game where Josh can get away with throwing 2 interceptions in the first half and having a fumble in the second half. Like, Josh Allen just needs to play this game clean. And I think if they're able to do that, Buffalo will find a way to win. Once again, I hate that this is 10 points. I'm not going to flip on this, though, Brad. I'm going to go ahead and agree with you and take the Bills reluctantly, because I do believe in Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm not a big Mason Rudolph guy, but I just think no TJ Watt. That's a massive loss for this Pittsburgh team. They're not great defensively as it is. They give up a lot between the 20s. And when Watt, he makes a lot of big plays. But if he's not there, that's just one more problem for him, because Josh Allen can beat you both with his legs and with his arm. And now you're talking about really, hurting that pass rush. And, I don't know, is he better with his legs, or would you rather have Josh Allen running, or would you rather have him throwing it? I mean, he'll probably throw it a lot more this week without that rush.
Yeah. And it's just, just making sure Josh doesn't take, unnecessary risks this week. I mean, what we saw last week in Miami, especially in the first half of the game, is the down part of the roller coaster that he's on. It seems like almost every game. And when you get into the playoffs, it's just a completely sort of different thing. So, the gunslinger mentality that Allen has just needs to be tempered a bit. And I would expect that Pittsburgh's going to run the ball a lot. They might actually remember that Mouth or whatever his official name is still the tight end on that team, because they've seemed to have forgotten that. And there probably be a couple big plays. Weather certainly could be a factor. But I'm with you. I'm taking Buffalo. Moving on to, speaking of weather, Kansas City, the Kansas City Chiefs at home against the Miami Dolphins. I hear it's going to be a little bit cold there in that game as well. The Chiefs are favored by 4.5 points. Earlier in the show, Brad mentioned that he believes both of the last year's Super Bowl participants are going to be out of the playoffs early this year. I don't think it's going to happen this week for the Kansas City Chiefs. I like the Chiefs in this one. I think they're going to figure out a couple of things and go back to Travis Kelce a lot more than they have in the past month or so. So I'm comfortable. This is probably the second easiest game for me to pick this week. I like Kansas City in a big way at home, regardless of how cold it is outside.
I've gone back and forth on this one a little bit, Dave, and originally
I'm trying to encourage you to take the Dolphins.
Yeah, well, originally I had the Dolphins when you set up the sheet for us. I took the Dolphins originally, but I look at it and I go, to me, there's four really not very good football teams that are in the playoffs. Two of them are playing in the Eagles-Buccaneers game, and these are the other two. I think Miami and Kansas City, for very different reasons, are not very good right now. Miami's basically picking up guys off the street this week, and they're going to go in and play. To me, you're playing Patrick Mahomes, who he could find a way to beat you when you're healthy, and when you got all pros in there. I think it's a real problem area for Miami right now. I think it's unfortunate. 5-6 weeks ago, this was probably one of the most interesting and entertaining teams to watch, and now it's almost painful watching them. I mean, they have so many injuries, and Mostert will probably muscle it up and play this week a little bit. Waddle, I think, is going to be back, so they've got some of their weapons back. But the offensive line is basically a mash unit, and the defense has got nobody left. And so I think it's a problem. I've gone back and forth a couple times on this. I'm going to take the Chiefs just because I think Patrick Mahomes can figure out how to beat guys off the streets. I mean, yeah. That's at the end of the day, as much as I think they're not a good football team this year, Kansas City, I just think Miami is basically a mash unit. They got nothing left, and it's sad because they were one of the great stories of the year, but they just got injuries at the wrong time of the year.
Yeah, and it is, and that's why we always say, especially at like the start of the NFL seasons, you look at everybody's rosters, and you're like, this team is going to do this, and this team's going to do that. And then if you were to do a side-by-side comparison of the Miami Dolphins roster at the beginning of the year versus what they're entering this playoff game with, the turnover is got to be, somewhere between 25 and 30% for this team. And then even some of the players who were on the roster at the start of the season who are going to play, and you mentioned two of them in Mostert and Waddle, let's just face it, we're not doing prop bets here on the show or anything, but like, what's the over under on either of those guys making it through the first half, let alone the entire game? And of course, I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but they're coming into the game limping, so to speak. And I just looked at this, and this just felt like Kansas City at home this week, a disappointing season for the Kansas City Chiefs. They played in an extremely weak division. And you're right, this just isn't a great Kansas City Chiefs team right now. I will say this, though, an explosion by this Chiefs offense outside of Travis Kelce this week could go a long way in at least adding some motivation and confidence to this team heading into next week's divisional round.
All right, my final game is the Browns at Texans. And, when we were talking about the NFC games, I said the Rams are probably the hottest team coming in that's playing this weekend anyways. I think the Browns are that version in the AFC. I think they're a real threat to everybody. I don't think anybody wants to see them right now. The Texans got in. It's been a great story. It's been a lot of fun to watch. But the Browns are going into Houston as 2.5-point favorites. And to me, that was one of the easy lines of the week. I think if they keep doing what they're doing and Joe Flacco keeps finding the big tight end there. I think Houston's in a lot of trouble, but they do have an exciting team, a young quarterback that's been a lot of fun to watch. I just think the Browns 2.5. It feels like a field goal game. Worst case scenario, the Browns win it with a field goal at the end, but I think they're going to win this game outright pretty comfortably.
Yeah, on paper, the Cleveland Browns should win this game. But I'm going to go ahead and take the Texans in it. I think like there's something that can be said, Brad, for momentum in the world of sports. And especially for like young football teams. I mean, like when you really look at this roster with this Houston Texans team, like they have very little business actually being in the playoffs this year. And it's just a hell of a job by their head coach, sort of short-circuiting a rebuild and accelerating that process. This is a team that entering the playoffs certainly has enough weapons on the wide receiver side of the fence as well as at tight end for CJ Stroud. It's also a home game. So I like the Texans actually a lot in this one. And as far as Joe Flacco goes, 13 touchdowns, 8 picks. That is Joe Flacco's record since he came out of retirement. Look, Joe Flacco has been playing okay. He hasn't been playing great. We know that the Cleveland Browns defense is really, really good. But I think there's momentum is going to play a large part in this game. And I like what they're building in Houston. So I'm going to go with the Texans.
Yeah, I just look at what Cleveland's done in the last handful of weeks, and suddenly David Njoku has the guy's become like a first-round draft pick next year in fantasy drafts, provided Flacco's still there playing quarterback. I mean, he's been literally unstoppable. You could make a case he's been the best offensive player in the league over the last 3-4 weeks. And the Browns defense is really good. They can run the ball. They're big and physical. I think the only thing holding them back from winning a division title was the Baltimore Ravens. And so I just think the Texans, it's been a nice story, but it all ends this weekend.
It just always shocks me when NFL teams forget that they have a tight end. Pittsburgh was really good at throwing to their tight end, for a long time, and suddenly have forgotten. And the Cleveland Browns just rediscovered what they have at the tight end position. It's one of the reasons CJ Stroud has been so successful is because they went out and got Schultz from the Dallas Cowboys last year. And that safety net, if you will, makes a huge difference. I mean, Patrick Mahomes' career wouldn't be where it's at right now without Travis Kelce. And
neither would Tom Brady's, for instance.
And Tom Brady with Gronk and dare we say Aaron Hernandez before he went off the deep end. So like that position is often overlooked by a lot of teams in the National Football League. And for years, I've been wondering, what is Cleveland doing with this guy? Because he has had games over the last couple years where you're like, he's great. And then they don't target him at all for weeks. Weeks go on. It's like he's in Siberia. So I don't really know what that's all about. And then, so moving on, Brad, to our last game of Wild Card Weekend 24. The Packers at the Dallas Cowboys. I was going to do my best not to mention Aaron Rodgers at all during this spiel. Cowboys favored by 7.5 in this. I like the Cowboys at home. The Cowboys have had, won more games than any other team in the NFL this year by 20 or more points. I think the stage is just going to be too big for Jordan Love at this point of his career. Very impressed, quite frankly, with how Jordan Love played for the most part in the second half of the season. Dak has played really well. I think Dak Prescott's sort of staying in the pocket more. He's very good at reading defenses. He's definitely improved his decision making over last year. And I think also the fact that they don't have him scrambling as much as he used to has actually benefited him a lot. So I like the Cowboys a lot in this particular game.
Yeah, there's a little bit of intrigue, Dave, when it comes to coaching with Mike McCarthy, right? The ex-Packer coach, who's now in Dallas. And
I mean, 12-5, 12-5, and 12-5.
Yeah.
I mean, you can hate him, but he's done a good job.
I'll tell you what, though, if he loses to the Packers at home on opening weekend, don't be surprised. That's all I'm going to say. Don't be surprised, because trust me, that's in the back of Jerry Jones's mind, is that, there was once upon a time, every season, there's once upon a time with this team that they're great, but they're never great enough to win a big game, it seems like. And so this should be a win for the Cowboys. I'm taking the Cowboys. I'm giving the 7.5, but I'm not all that comfortable with it, to be honest with you. I think the fact that they're playing at home and they've been so dominant at home is why I got to take the Cowboys. History says this year anyways, take them. But, I don't trust Mike McCarthy as far as I can throw him. And Jordan Love is playing better football. I know you texted me over the weekend. You said, man, it just kills me that the Packers have got another great quarterback. Potentially, while the Vikings are still dealing with, Jalen Hall and, Nick Mullins and guys like this, right? As a Vikings fan, it's a killer watching the kid go out and play well, but he's played well. And a lot of that is just wide receivers. The young kids are starting to make some plays. And so, that's a lot of it. You got to have guys around that you can make plays too. But I just think the moment's a little bit too big for the Packers. I don't think they're quite there yet. I think they're a year away, but they're on the rise, no question. But I'm going to take the boys here.
Yeah. I was hoping you'd flip flop on that, but I could tell as you were going through your segment,
my progressions,
that wasn't going to happen. You were trying to convince yourself to head down that route. Brad, I don't know if you saw the Aaron Rodgers fiasco over the last couple of weeks at all. But my favorite part of it has to be 2 days ago, Pat McAfee goes on his own show and basically says Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be on again, and thankfully, because it was just causing too much havoc, blah, 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 blah. And then in typical Howard Stern fashion, versus WNBC, Pat McAfee went ahead and brought Aaron Rodgers back the very next day for a segment on his show. And I just thought it was funny. It was hilarious. My personal opinions of Aaron Rodgers aside, I did enjoy the fact that the Pat McAfee show was taking on the good folks over at the mothership a little bit.
Yeah, that's McAfee. McAfee being McAfee. When you look at this game, though, the Cowboys and the Packers, being a Vikings fan, it's got to hurt you either way to pick either one of these teams to win, right? I mean, it's painful. Vikings fans have so many painful memories as it is, but a lot of them have come against these two organizations right here.
I think of the Herschel Walker trade, the trade that made the Dallas Cowboys great again. Essentially, that's painful. The Brett Favre era,
the push off.
Yeah, the Aaron Rodgers era, the Aaron Rodgers off the field era, and then now we're sitting here with Jordan Love, who absolutely deserves some credit for what he's done this year, and how he looks. Look, I'm not sure he's going to be at that Aaron Rodgers level, that MVP level. But in his first year of starting, the statistics are basically even between him and Aaron Rodgers' first year as a starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. And we know that unlike running backs, quarterbacks actually get better with age, Brad. So it will be interesting to see how this all plays out. All right, Mr. Hoysef, those are our wild card picks for this week. Any final thoughts, any predictions on who is going to be? This is one of my favorite questions to ask you. Who's going to be the Los Angeles Charger head coach?
Wow. There's a lot of coaching vacancies out there. There's rumors now that Gerard Mayo is going to take over in New England, or did he? Did they already announce?
Yeah, that got announced today. He's taking over New England.
Gerard Mayo there. I think nothing's final's been made in Las Vegas. I mean, I'm not convinced 100% that that's a done deal for Antonio Pierce. There's rumors out there that Philadelphia could part ways if they suffer another embarrassing loss. I mean, it's been a rough. You think about it. That kid had a great start to his career in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And it has just come crashing down. And, Philadelphia is a tough place. I mean, there's, the old joke that they booed Santa Claus for 30 years. So, I mean, those are the most bitter fans on the planet. But, that kid could be in trouble up there. I'm not convinced Mike McCarthy makes it out alive, Dave. I know you say 12-5, and what have you, but you lose to the Packers, his old team, and Jerry Jones takes he's been great, but ever since Jimmy Johnson went into the Ring of Honor there in Dallas, they haven't been playing very good.
Yeah, which was a fantastic ceremony. How about those Cowboys? I have to say that Bill Belichick has some deep connections inside the Atlanta Falcons organization. I think that's his fallback gig. But if Sirianni is out this weekend or come Tuesday, I wouldn't be surprised to see Belichick in Philadelphia. I mean, how great would that be? Because he's the kind of coach that can handle it. And he's also the kind of head coach that needs a really good quarterback. I mean, who doesn't? And you can look at the track record of all the other head coaches that have moved on from one team where they had great success to another team. And most of the legendary coaches have failed in their second or third attempts simply because they didn't have a good quarterback. So I think whoever the new head coach is of the Los Angeles Chargers, they have a step up in terms of the open positions in the National Football League at this point. I would love to see Jim Harbaugh in LA.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm kind of intrigued to see what's going to happen in Seattle because, I try to think of, Bill Belichick. Where does Bill Belichick end up? Well, first of all, Bill Belichick's going to come at a very big price tag, and the Chargers don't like to spend money. The Raiders don't really like to spend money. There's a lot of teams and organizations that have a history of just kind of trying to do things on the cheap. I think maybe Atlanta is that guy down there. He's kind of a wild card down there in Atlanta. Whatever his name is,
Arthur Blank.
Yeah, Arthur Blank. He's kind of got a blank check, if you will.
Yeah, and founder of Home Depot.
Right. I think the most comfortable match is Seattle for Bill Belichick because they like to spend money up there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Belichick end up as the head coach of the Seahawks. That's my early prediction.
All right, there you go. Brad Hoyseth in with Bill Belichick. I'd give anything to see Bill Belichick as the head coach also of the Los Angeles Chargers. He would eat the press alive in LA. And then if Randy Moss, like in that Halloween party video where Bill Belichick was on roller skates dressed up as a pirate, if we could reenact that on Venice Beach, that would be the ultimate dream for me. One last thing on the Belichick connection, we probably shouldn't forget, and I would like to see Antonio Pierce get a shot at the Raider gig, but Tom Brady does actually own a small piece of the Las Vegas Raiders. Just pointing that out as we wrap up this wild card special edition, if you will, of Gods of Odds. Hey, that is Brad Hoyseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I'm Dave DeBopp up in Northern California, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing week.